What drove a Neanderthal mother 60,000 years ago to carefully arrange flowers around her child's grave in the Shanidar Cave of northern Iraq, creating humanity's first known act of spiritual mourning? This single moment, frozen in archaeological time, represents something profound about our species that transcends mere survival: the birth of the sacred, the first stirrings of religious consciousness that would forever separate us from every other creature on Earth. Picture the world as it existed 100,000 years ago. The African savanna stretches endlessly under star-filled skies unmarred by light pollution, where our earliest human ancestors gazed upward with minds capable of wonder for the first time in planetary history. These were not the primitive brutes often depicted in popular imagination, but sophisticated beings whose brains had evolved to question, to seek meaning beyond the immediate needs of food, shelter, and reproduction. In their hands, they held the spark of something revolutionary: the capacity to believe in the unseen, to create meaning from mystery, and to commune with forces beyond their physical world. The story of humanity's first religions begins not in the grand temples of ancient civilizations, but in the deepest caves of Africa and Asia, where archaeological evidence reveals spiritual practices that predate organized agriculture by tens of thousands of years. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, researchers have uncovered ochre drawings dating back 73,000 years, geometric patterns that suggest our ancestors were already engaging in symbolic thinking, creating representations of concepts that existed beyond the tangible world around them. These weren't mere decorations, but humanity's first attempts to externalize the spiritual realm through art. Dr. Christopher Henshelwood's excavations at Blombos have revealed something even more extraordinary. Shell beads, carefully perforated and strung together, provide evidence of personal ornamentation that suggest early humans were developing concepts of identity, status, and perhaps spiritual protection. The deliberate creation of these objects required forward thinking, cultural transmission of knowledge, and most importantly, the belief that certain materials possessed qualities beyond their physical properties, the foundational elements of religious thought. But it was the discovery at Göbekli Cave in Israel that truly revolutionized our understanding of prehistoric spirituality. Here, archaeologist Bernard Vandermeersch uncovered graves dating to 92,000 years ago, where early modern humans had been buried with deer antlers placed deliberately across their chests and red ochre sprinkled over their bodies. This wasn't random disposal of the dead, but careful ritual preparation for what these ancient people believed lay beyond death. The red ochre, in particular, seems to have held profound significance, its color perhaps representing life, blood, or rebirth in ways we can only imagine. The most shocking revelation about prehistoric spirituality, however, emerged from an unexpected source. For decades, scientists dismissed Neanderthals as brutish, incapable of complex thought or spiritual awareness. Then came the discoveries at Shanidar Cave in Iraq during the 1950s and 1960s, led by archaeologist Ralph Solecki. What they found challenged every assumption about our extinct cousins. Neanderthal burials contain not just bodies, but entire ecosystems of carefully selected flowers: hyacinth, bachelor's button, groundsel, great hyacinth, and hollyhock. Plants that bloomed in spring, suggesting these ancient people understood seasonal cycles and perhaps saw death as part of nature's eternal rhythm. The implications were staggering. If Neanderthals, who diverged from our evolutionary line 400,000 years ago, possessed spiritual awareness, then religious consciousness might be one of the oldest traits of human cognition. The flowers at Shanidar weren't random. Pollen analysis revealed they were specifically chosen, suggesting knowledge of their properties. Some had medicinal uses, others held aromatic qualities that might mask the scent of decay, but together they created something unprecedented in the natural world: a funeral bouquet, humanity's first offering to the unknown realm of death. As we journey deeper into humanity's spiritual awakening, we encounter the painted caves of Europe, where Cro-Magnon artists created the world's first cathedrals. But even before Lascaux and Altamira captured worldwide attention, similar spiritual expressions were emerging across Africa and Asia. In the Apollo 11 cave of Namibia, archaeologists discovered painted slabs dating to 25,000 years ago, depicting animals in ways that suggest they held significance beyond mere hunting records. These creatures, elephants, rhinoceros, and antelope, were rendered with a reverence that implies spiritual connection between human and animal worlds. The painted caves of Africa reveal something extraordinary about early religious practice. Unlike European cave art, which often depicted hunting scenes, African paintings frequently show human figures in elaborate headdresses and ceremonial postures, suggesting organized ritual practices. At Sodilo Hills in Botswana, a site considered sacred by local communities for millennia, rock paintings span 100,000 years of continuous spiritual expression. The oldest layers reveal geometric patterns and animal figures that seem to emerge from the rock itself, as if ancient artists believed they were releasing spirits already dwelling in the stone. These weren't mere decorations, but humanity's first attempts to externalize the spiritual realm through art. Dr. David Lewis Williams, a leading rock art researcher, has proposed that these paintings represent humanity's first attempts to depict altered states of consciousness. The geometric patterns, the hybrid human-animal figures, and the way images seem to use natural rock formations as integral parts of the composition all suggest these caves served as portals between ordinary reality and spiritual realms. The artists weren't simply decorating walls, they were mapping pathways to the sacred. Perhaps the most revolutionary discovery reshaping our understanding of prehistoric religion emerged from Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey. Though its implications extend far beyond its geographic boundaries. Dating to 9500 BCE, this massive stone temple complex predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years and was built by people who hadn't yet developed agriculture or permanent settlements. The site's massive T-shaped pillars, carved with intricate reliefs of animals and abstract symbols, required coordination of hundreds of workers and represented an unprecedented investment of human energy into purely spiritual purposes. What makes Göbekli Tepe revolutionary isn't just its age, but what it suggests about the role of religion in human development. Rather than developing as a byproduct of settled agricultural life, organized religion appears to have been the driving force that led to civilization itself. The need to build and maintain this sacred site may have catalyzed the development of agriculture, permanent settlements, and complex social organization, suggesting that humanity's spiritual yearning didn't follow civilization, but created it. The artifacts discovered throughout prehistoric sites reveal increasingly sophisticated spiritual practices. In the Pavilion Cave of Wales, archaeologists uncovered the Red Lady of Pavilion, actually a young man buried 33,000 years ago, with elaborate grave goods, including ivory ornaments, shells, and the ever-present red ochre covering his bones. The burial suggests belief in an afterlife requiring material provisions, indicating these ancient people conceived of existence beyond physical death. These weren't mere tokens of affection, but essential equipment for navigating realms beyond mortal comprehension. The development of shamanic practices appears throughout prehistoric evidence, though its recognition required archaeologists to expand their interpretations beyond Western religious concepts. At the Denisova Cave in Siberia, discoveries of carefully crafted bone ornaments, unusual stone tools with no apparent practical purpose, and evidence of plant-based substances suggest early humans were engaging in consciousness-altering practices designed to commune with spiritual realms. Dr. Jean Klotz and David Lewis Williams have argued that shamanism represents humanity's earliest organized religious system, emerging independently across continents as human consciousness evolved the capacity for spiritual experience. The painted caves of both Europe and Africa show similar themes: human figures with animal attributes, geometric patterns consistent with altered states of consciousness, and the integration of natural rock formations into artistic compositions. These similarities across vast distances suggest shamanic practices emerged from fundamental aspects of human neurological evolution rather than cultural transmission. The musical dimensions of prehistoric religion reveal another layer of spiritual sophistication. Bone flutes, discovered in European caves dating to 40,000 years ago, represent humanity's earliest known musical instruments. but their significance extends beyond entertainment. Acoustic analysis of painted caves reveal many were chosen specifically for their sound properties, natural amphitheaters where human voices would resonate with supernatural power. The paintings themselves often cluster in areas where sounds create the most dramatic echoes, suggesting early humans understood the connection between acoustic phenomena and spiritual experience. At the Hohlfels Cave in Germany, archaeologists discovered not only bone flutes, but also carved figurines, including the Venus of Hohlfels, a 40,000-year-old representation of a woman with exaggerated feminine features. These Venus figurines, found across Europe and Asia, have sparked decades of debate about their significance. Recent analysis suggests they may represent goddess figures, indicating prehistoric humans had developed concepts of divine feminine power governing fertility, life cycles, and natural abundance.
The sophistication of prehistoric burial practices reveals increasingly complex afterlife beliefs as human societies evolved. At the Paleolithic Cave, the careful positioning of bodies, the selection of specific grave goods, and the use of red ochre all suggest detailed concepts about post-mortem existence. Similarly, burials at Göbekli Cave show individuals placed in fetal positions, perhaps representing rebirth into spiritual realms. In contrast, others were arranged facing specific directions, suggesting beliefs about geographic or celestial significance in death. The discovery of deliberate skull modifications in prehistoric burials has opened new questions about early spiritual practices. At several sites across Africa and Asia, archaeologists have found evidence of post-mortem skull removal and careful preservation, suggesting ancestors' remains held ongoing spiritual significance for their communities. These practices, which continued into historical times among various cultures worldwide, may represent humanity's earliest concepts of saints, spirits, or ancestral guides whose physical remains retained supernatural power. The revolution in understanding prehistoric religion continues with each new archaeological discovery. Recent excavations at Jebel Uhud in Morocco have pushed back the timeline of modern human emergence to 300,000 years ago, while simultaneously revealing evidence of symbolic behavior and possible spiritual practices. The implications are profound. If spiritual consciousness emerged alongside anatomical modernity, then religion isn't simply a cultural development, but a fundamental aspect of what makes us human. Genetic analysis of prehistoric populations has revealed another surprising dimension of early spirituality. The interbreeding between modern humans, Neanderthals, and Denisovans suggests these groups shared not only DNA, but potentially spiritual concepts. Archaeological evidence of similar burial practices across these populations implies that religious consciousness may have been exchanged along with genetic material, creating hybrid spiritual traditions that influenced human development across continents. The tools of prehistoric spirituality extended beyond artistic expression and burial practices. Archaeologists have identified specialized implements that seem to have served purely ritual purposes: perfectly crafted stone knives never used for cutting, elaborately decorated bone needles too delicate for practical sewing, and mysterious perforated batons whose function remains unknown, but whose careful craftsmanship suggests sacred significance. These objects represent enormous investments of time and skill in creating items for spiritual rather than survival purposes. The geographic distribution of prehistoric religious sites reveals fascinating patterns about early human migration and cultural transmission. The appearance of similar spiritual practices across Africa, Asia, and Europe suggests either independent development of religious consciousness or remarkably effective cultural communication networks spanning continents. Sites like Blombos Cave in South Africa, Göbekli Cave in Israel, and the Painted Caves of France show striking similarities in the use of ochre, burial practices, and artistic themes, despite being separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. Recent discoveries in Asia have revealed spiritual practices that challenge Western-centric views of prehistoric religion. At the Tom Pa Ling Cave in Laos, Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of elaborate burial rituals, including the careful arrangement of bodies and the inclusion of worked stone tools as grave goods. Similarly, discoveries at the Nia caves in Malaysia suggest Southeast Asian populations developed sophisticated spiritual practices independently of African or European influences. The role of women in prehistoric spirituality emerges through careful analysis of burial practices and artistic representations. Female burials often contain different types of grave goods than male burials, suggesting gender-specific beliefs about afterlife requirements or spiritual roles. The prevalence of Venus figurines and the apparent importance of feminine symbolism in cave art imply that women may have held central positions in early religious practices, possibly as spiritual leaders or intermediaries with divine forces. The astronomical dimensions of prehistoric spirituality reveal another layer of sophistication. Many cave paintings align with specific celestial events, suggesting early humans tracked seasonal cycles and incorporated astronomical observations into their spiritual practices. The positioning of some burial sites in relation to sunrise or sunset directions implies beliefs about the connection between human death and celestial movements, indicating prehistoric peoples conceived of existence within cosmic rather than merely terrestrial frameworks. The mystery of prehistoric religion deepens with each archaeological discovery, yet fundamental questions remain unanswered. We can observe the artifacts of ancient spiritual practices, the painted caves, the ceremonial burials, the carefully crafted ritual objects, but the actual beliefs, myths, and cosmologies of our prehistoric ancestors remain tantalizingly beyond our reach. What stories did they tell around Paleolithic fires about the origins of the world? What names did they give to the spirits they painted on cave walls? How did they explain the mystery of consciousness itself, the very awareness that made their spiritual questioning possible? Perhaps most intriguingly, we still don't understand what triggered the apparently sudden emergence of spiritual consciousness in human evolution. Archaeological evidence suggests a relatively rapid development of symbolic thinking, artistic expression, and religious practice around 70,000 to 40,000 years ago, a brief moment in evolutionary terms that transformed not just human behavior, but the very nature of existence on Earth. What neurological changes enabled our ancestors to conceive of realms beyond physical reality? What environmental or social pressures catalyzed the development of religious thinking? These questions remain among the deepest mysteries in human prehistory. The legacy of prehistoric religion continues to influence human spirituality today. The themes that emerged in humanity's earliest spiritual expressions, the reverence for natural forces, the belief in life after death, the use of altered consciousness to access divine realms, and the creation of sacred spaces for community ritual, persist across every religious tradition on Earth. In studying our prehistoric ancestors' first encounters with the holy, we glimpse not only the origins of human spirituality, but the fundamental questions that continue to drive our species' search for meaning in a vast and mysterious universe. As we continue to uncover the spiritual lives of our prehistoric ancestors, each discovery adds another piece to the puzzle of human consciousness itself. The painted handprints in caves across the world, pressed into stone by humans who lived tens of thousands of years ago, remain as fresh and immediate as the day they were made, eternal testimony to our species' unending dialogue with the sacred, the mysterious, and the divine. If these revelations about humanity's earliest spiritual awakening have captured your imagination, subscribe to Origins of Faith for more explorations into the hidden corners of our past. Like this video if you're fascinated by the archaeological discoveries that continue to reshape our understanding of human consciousness, and explore our related content, diving deeper into the mysteries of prehistoric life. The story of human spirituality is still being written with each discovery, and there's always more to uncover about the extraordinary journey of our species from the African savanna to the stars above.